Welcome to the Cohn Zohn podcast. We're your host, two Cohns, Grant and Lowell. Although I don't call him Lowell, he's my dad. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Iggy. I call him Iggy. I don't call him Grant. Here we are on a beautiful Monday morning in the Oakland Hills in my office, and Iggy grew up in this house. So what I think we ought to do is let's get going. We know that there are 4 games in the NFL next weekend. Let's try to pick a winner in each game. With this one caution, we're doing the best we can. We could be wrong on all 4 games, but we've thought about it and we're giving honest opinions and stuff for you to think about. First game, Titans at Ravens. Who are you picking?
I'm picking the Ravens. I feel like the Ravens are the best team in the league as long as their quarterback, Lamar Jackson, is healthy. He was terrible in the playoffs last year, but he was a rookie. He was the youngest quarterback ever making a start. Usually guys perform better in their second start in the playoffs. I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens.
You know, I can see why you feel that way, and they're a big favorite, and they're playing at home. I really feel that Tennessee is the most underrated of all the teams in the playoffs. I think they're an excellent outfit. I really like their quarterback. I mean, where did Tannehill come from? So I actually feel upset.
So what do you like most about the Titans? Is it their running back?
Oh, my God, that Henry.
Yeah.
He's the best running back in the league.
He might be he's definitely elite.
Yeah, he's Bo Jackson.
And if you have a running back like that in the NFL, in the playoffs, it seems like you always have a chance to win the game. And a little preview, we're not going to get to the Niners yet, but the Vikings are kind of similar to the Titans.
Yes.
Something to think about. The reason the Titans have a puncher's chance is that running back, and the Vikings are kind of similar. So something to think about before we get there.
Yeah, but I want to say one other thing about the Ravens. And again, I really respect them, and they're really good. And Jackson is a wonderful quarterback, but he's not a wonderful thrower. Mm-mm. And at a certain point in the playoffs, you're going to have to make a pass. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to pass for a win.
Yeah.
And I think Tannehill is better able to do it than Jackson.
Yeah. Well,
so
okay,
we disagree on that.
We disagree on that one.
Okay, but I don't want to bet any more bottles of wine because I keep losing bottles of wine.
Yeah, no more bets for that one.
Yeah, for that one. Okay, no. The next one is Houston at the Chiefs. Now, in Brooklyn, we'd say Houston at the Chiefs. Who are you picking at Houston at the Chiefs?
You could call them whatever you want, Houston or Houston. I'm not picking them.
No, me neither.
I don't believe in him. I mean, the other one we call Andy Reid the Walrus.
The Walrus.
The Walrus. He's a high-level loser. He loses a lot in the playoffs. But so is the coach for the Texans, Bill O'Brien. He's one of these Bill Belichick disciples who thinks he's Bill Belichick and acts like he invented football but didn't. I'm surprised he won that playoff game last week against the Bills. I'm always betting against Bill O'Brien.
And one of the things about the Chiefs is they actually usually don't play great defense. They're sort of like a Don Nelson team.
Yes.
They're an offense, no defense,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
But they have been playing good defense lately. Andy Reid is a brilliant offensive coach, but we both agree that he's a high-level loser. So could you please explain to our watchers and listeners, viewers, what a high-level loser is?
Well, I think we saw it yesterday when the Saints lost. Look at Sean Payton. Yeah. 3 years in a row, they've lost on like the final play of a playoff game late. Another high-level loser, you could say, God love you, sorry. But Jim Harbaugh, a guy who has a lot of success in the regular season, consistently wins at least 10 games.
Yes.
Stays employed.
Yes.
Gets to big games and loses them.
Yes.
And is defined by that.
Yes.
High-level loser.
Yeah.
It's like the guy who makes it to the final table in the World Series of Poker but doesn't win.
Is Pete Carroll a high-level loser?
Well, he's a champion.
He's a champion.
But he's defined by his high-level losses, so I would say yes.
Well, yeah, it's part of his personality and his fate.
It's the dominant part of his fate and personality. When we think back on him in 20 years, we'll think about how he basically wasted one of the more dominant potential dynasties there could have been. They should have won 3 Super Bowls. They only won 1.
Okay, let's go to the NFC. And I have to admit, I'm more interested in
I have more to say about the NFC.
Yeah, I'm more interested.
Yeah.
I think part of it is because we've covered the Niners so long.
Right. And it's like, we'll get to know the Chiefs a little bit more when they earn it and deserve.
Right.
When they get to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Although I just want to say before we get to the NFC, I think there's a real chance that the Chiefs could make it.
Yeah.
Everyone's thinking about the Ravens. They've been the best team all year. The Chiefs beat the Ravens this year, and the Chiefs are really playing well right now.
And what a quarterback.
What a quarterback. You could argue he's the best one in the league.
Yeah, Mahomes is just phenomenal. And he has such poise for a young guy.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I wasn't alive back then, but the comparison is to Dan Marino when he was tearing up the league when he was 22, 23 years old.
Got it.
Yeah.
How many championships did Dan Marino win?
How many championships did Pat Mahomes win?
Yeah, okay. All right, now we got Seattle at Green Bay. This is very interesting.
Very interesting. We both have very strong things to say about this.
Okay,
game.
who do you pick?
Seattle.
Give me I disagree, but
Okay.
give me a reason.
Well, I got a whole spiel to go into with the Packers. Why don't you say why you think the Packers are going to win first?
Okay, they're at home.
Yep.
And
That's fair.
That's a big deal.
It's the Seahawks' second straight road game. That's tough.
And that is quite a home,
Yes.
that Lambeau
Oh.
Field, what a place to
Yes.
play. So there's that. Also, to me, Seattle is a running team which has no running game.
Yes.
They no longer, I mean, I
Yes.
know Marshawn Lynch,
That's
it's a
absolutely
great
true.
story and all that, but they don't have a running game anymore. So I think that's
We have 7 yards in the game.
yeah. Now he had a touchdown, but
Sure.
look, I love Russell Wilson. I love to watch him work, but sometimes it's like him against everybody.
Yes.
So okay, now go over to Green Bay. I can't stand Green Bay.
Yeah.
I saw them get murdered by the Niners, and as I recall, they lost to the Chargers.
That's right.
And their quarterback is such a sour puss.
Yes.
Or we'd say in Brooklyn, the sour pickle.
Yes.
If things don't go well, he seems to sulk.
Yeah.
He complains. He seems to blame his teammates.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
I just actually don't think they're that good, but I don't think Seattle is that good.
Yeah.
So I think they'll beat. It's one not so good team
Yeah.
beating another not so good team.
I think basically we could say the Super Bowl winner, the NFC winner is coming out of the Niners-Vikings game.
I say there's no question. I'd be shocked if that were not the case.
We've really said a lot of negative things about Aaron Rodgers, and he deserves them. But let's look at the Packers another way. He does have a sour pickle look on his face all the time, but I think there's a reason for it. He plays for the Packers. He doesn't play for the Patriots. He plays for the Packers, which is kind of a second-rate organization. He's played for some really bad coaches. Mike McCarthy, I'm not a fan. And this guy...
Well, we'll get to him later.
This guy, Matt LaFleur, might be even worse. Just looking at him from afar, it looks like on the sideline he's overwhelmed all the time. He looks frustrated. He looks like he loses his cool. And it looks like none of the players in that team respect him. Here's the thing about him. He was the offensive coordinator for 1 year with the Titans. They fired him. They kept it quiet. And then after he got fired as an offensive coordinator, he got hired as a head coach because he knows Sean McVay. He was part of that fad. The players know it. They don't respect him. And what I hear is that Aaron Rodgers is running that entire team, and he's a terrific player. I understand it would give me a sour pickle face too if I felt like I was a Hall of Fame guy and trying to carry an organization, carry a coach who didn't know what he was doing. They won 13 games. I don't think you can win in the playoffs without a head coach. I think they're going to get exposed because of this head coach, Matt LaFleur.
Okay, and someone associated with the league calls him Little Lord Fauntleroy, right?
Little Lord Fauntleroy. And the prediction I've heard is that while Aaron Rodgers did all he could to carry this team next year, year 2 of Little Lord Fauntleroy will show what he's really made of, and people are expecting a big-time regression from the Packers next year.
I just want to contest one thing you said. You said the Packers are a second-rate organization. I don't think that. Now, you may mean it's not a big media town. You know, Green Bay is a town. It's not a city.
Let me tell you what I mean.
Okay, tell me what you mean.
I mean, I don't consider Mike McCarthy a good coach, and I don't consider Matt LaFleur a good coach. So
I agree.
So from Aaron Rodgers' perspective, it's like, geez, give me Sean Payton or Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
On the other hand, also, the Packers didn't start really getting into free agency, signing players seriously until this year. They went most Aaron Rodgers' career just trying to build the team through the draft, which is not the way to do it. So I would say in those ways they have been a little bit out of step and maybe a little, second rate.
Okay, it's fine by me, second-rate team. I just wanted to defend Green Bay.
I love that they're owned by the town,
Yeah.
and I love the whole setup of it, but their front office hasn't done that well the last 10 years.
I agree with you. Okay, now we come to the game that everyone around here cares about, would be the Niners and the Vikings. Who are you picking in that game?
Well, before I get to my pick, I think it's
Okay.
interesting to say that this is the worst case scenario for the 49ers.
Interesting.
Well, I'm picking the 49ers.
Me too.
We're picking the 49ers.
Yeah.
But there were 3 teams they could have played, the Eagles, the Seahawks, and the Vikings. Maybe you'd say the Seahawks were the worst case because despite all of their flaws, they played the Niners close.
Yeah, they always do.
But I believe the Vikings are better than the Seahawks. I think, actually, if the Niners and Vikings played on a neutral site with equal amount of rest for both teams, I would pick the Vikings because the Vikings are healthier right now. The Niners are the team with a lot of injuries. But that's not the case. They're playing the game in Santa Clara. The Niners have had 2 weeks to rest and prepare. And the Vikings are going to be the only team in the next round of the playoffs that will only have 6 days to prepare. It'll be their second straight road game. It's probably a scheduled loss for them.
It's very hard. Now, I want to say I really respect the Vikings. I think they have a hell of a head coach.
Hell of a head coach.
Hell of a head coach.
And not just a hell of a head coach. They got Gary Kubiak as their senior offensive coach and assistant head coach. They're really good on both sides.
Also, Cousins is an underrated quarterback.
We've talked about him on this podcast before.
Yeah. Yesterday, he stepped up.
Absolutely.
He stepped up.
Yes.
In fact, he stepped up and Drew Brees didn't.
No question.
And Cousins has a reputation of not being able to seize the moment.
Right.
At the moment being too big for him. Not true.
Not true.
Not true.
Absolutely not.
He did it in the Superdome
Yeah.
yesterday. So I think he's a very good quarterback. I think they're well coached. I think they have a really good defense. And I think it'll be a very, very physical and hard game. But I just think the Niners have too much, especially on offense, for Minnesota to compete. What do you think?
Yeah, as well as the Vikings played against the Saints, they didn't score much. Their offense wasn't that good. They averaged like 4.9 yards per play, which isn't much. They won because of their defense and because they got the ball first in overtime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel the Niners defense, and I mean in terms of injuries, is prepared for this game? Now, as Mariucci would say, they're going to have 2 weeks to healthy up.
The way I look at the Niners is they've been the more exhausted team
Yes.
in the games they've played for like 2 months. I think actually in this game, for the first time in a while, they should be the team that's rested and more energized. The Vikings should be dragging. I mean, after going into overtime in New Orleans and playing with such effort and having to come back 6 days later, that means they'll probably get 1 practice, maybe 2, 1.5. It's going to be tough. I think they should be pretty tired. That being said, if you just go around the roster and compare them, Kirk Cousins to Jimmy Garoppolo, you could make the argument that's pretty much a wash.
Yeah.
Then you go the running backs. I mean, Dalvin Cook, the guy that they have over there, is one of the 3 or 4 best running backs in the league. They have better running backs than the 49ers. Their wide receivers, Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, they're slightly better than what the Niners have. Their tight ends, not as good as George Kittle, but you would say that Cousins actually has better weapons than Jimmy Garoppolo. And the way that defense played yesterday, I could see the Niners groaning a little bit privately when they were watching those games, being, this is the team we would have preferred not to play.
I want to come back to the Niners defense. They've had a lot of injuries. Where do they stand in terms of health? Who'll be back?
Quan Alexander is supposed to come back.
That's a big deal.
Big deal. Although it's interesting because his replacement just saved their season.
Yeah.
But Quan Alexander's coming back. Unclear about D Ford. It seems that he should be coming back. He still hasn't practiced yet. We should know on Tuesday whether he's practicing or not. If he's a limited participant in practice, it probably means he'll play. The funny thing about it, though, is the Vikings just ran the ball 40 times against the Saints. They're a run-first team. It's supposed to be raining on Saturday. If it's a rainy, muddy game, D Ford may not even matter. It might be all about your run defenders because it might be hard to throw the ball. That being said, remember, the Niners are missing both of their nose tackles, and they're going to have to stop not Derrick Henry, but maybe someone just as good, a little bit smaller, but just as good. So their run defense is going to be the most important thing, even probably more important than their pass rush.
And D Ford is pretty much specifically a pass rusher.
Even when he was healthy, they would use him just as a pass rusher.
Because he's not big.
No.
And
if he's on the field on first down, you run at him.
Okay, so let's summarize. We both picked the Niners.
Yes.
And I want to say, not because we're homers.
No.
Because we're not.
No.
But we honestly, in fact, I picked Seattle to beat the Niners.
right.
That's why I lost a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
But,
That's why we're not betting this week.
well, we're also agreeing this week.
Yeah. On certain things.
On certain things. But, we both picked the Niners, but this is going to be a grueling, gruesome game.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, we both picked the Niners. So if they win, they would either play the Packers or the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game. I think from the Niners' perspective, they'd rather see the Packers.
Well, if they get the Packers,
that's hallelujah.
They will.
Hallelujah.
You think that Aaron Rodgers was a sourpuss to begin with? He will look like a Halloween mask on the field. The Niners will murder Green Bay.
And remember, the issue with Green Bay is they don't have a head coach. Little old Lord Fauntleroy is not that good of an offensive coach. He got fired as an offensive coordinator, and he's not a leader. Robert Saleh is a hell of a defensive coordinator. They were roommates in college. Robert Saleh ate his lunch the last time they played. He would do it again.
They were roommates in college.
Roommates in college.
See, I didn't know that.
See, I got these little tidbits.
I like, these tidbits.
You like tidbits.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like we were talking last week about this table.
Oh, yeah.
Card table. And right on this podcast, we were talking about it, or it could have been on a hot mic. And you said they play cards, and I said you ought to write an article on
And
that.
then I did.
You did.
It was really fun to do the article, too.
Yeah.
I went to Eric Armstead, who was kind of looking at me like, why are we talking about spades like this?
Spades, yeah.
Some players are like, I don't get it, man. But he was cool, even though he didn't get it. I went over to Sheldon Day, and he was like, we get to philosophize about spades? He was so into it.
He said that?
That was his attitude, and he
wonderful.
was great.
Well, and then all of our viewers and listeners got to see how an article came to life.
Also, you suggested I interview Robert Saleh about chess.
Yeah.
I did it yesterday. I haven't written it yet. I want to give a little preview.
Yeah.
Because it was really interesting. The most interesting thing I thought about it was I asked Saleh, what's your favorite chess piece?
Oh.
And I was expecting him to say, maybe the rook because it can go in unconventional ways, or the queen because it's so aggressive and dominant. He said the pawns.
Whoa.
And I said, well, why? And he said, well, a lot of people disregard pawns. He said, I like to be very aggressive with the pawns because if you keep moving them forward, they can be very menacing. Menacing, it was the word he used. And I said, well, is there any carryover between how you use pawns and think of pawns and how you use football players and think of football players? He said, well, basically, I would never want to disrespect a football player by calling him a chess piece, but the pawns are the role players. They're not the superstars. They're the role players. And to me, that is what makes that's the signature of a Robert Saleh defense, what makes him good. He doesn't just feature his best players. It's not just look at how he uses Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and Buckner. It's look at how he uses K'Wan Williams. Look at how he uses these guys as decoys and brings in Fred Warner and gets Fred Warner the sack. He's very aggressive with the people you wouldn't expect with his pawns. And it makes his defense menacing. I thought that was interesting.
Well, he's a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Don't you love when you have a person like Saleh and you ask an off-the-wall question about chess and football, and he loves it and has answers?
Yes.
When I used to get interviews like that,
Yeah.
and I realized, oh my God, I'm
Yes.
in an interview like this.
It's a gift from God.
Yeah. And you know who used to give them all the time? Steve Young.
No question.
Yeah, I got to tell you what happened one time. I was sitting with him in Santa Clara. I was sitting with him in Santa Clara, and I was starting to ask my questions, and he goes, don't ask your questions. He said, I have a better article for you. He was so, I'm going to use a silly word. Steve Young was so cute.
Yeah.
He was so cute. He said, whatever you're going to ask me, I have a better article for you. He said, I was taking notes. I didn't have, in those days, I was in my pad. So he said, start taking notes. He said, every Tuesday night, that was the players off, he used to live with Harris Barton. They had a house in Palo Alto. Yeah. And he said, we have a team dinner. We have a caterer.
Wow.
We have a caterer. And he said, I want to tell you who comes and the name of the cook and all of this. And he said, write this.
That's so interesting.
And I of course I said, does Joe Montana come? He goes, absolutely.
That's
the
really
whole
interesting.
team comes, and it's every Tuesday night at Harrison and my house. Well, I wrote it for the Chronicle. It was the centerpiece of the Chronicle the next day. Yeah. So when you get an article like that, you love it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's
That's
a
great.
gift from God.
That's great. And one more tidbit from that interview. He used to be Saleh, quality control coach with the Texans when Greg Roman was on that staff, and they used to play chess together.
Wow.
Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, who used to be with the Niners.
Yeah.
Back when, 10 years ago, him and Robert Saleh used to play chess together all the time.
That is so fascinating. Yeah. Somehow I think Saleh beat him.
One more thing about the team dinners. We were talking to Richard Sherman the other day, and he was explaining why people like Jimmy Garoppolo. And we've talked about this.
Yeah.
He's definitely a team guy, and the players love him. And Richard Sherman talked about team dinners. He said a lot of times quarterbacks will make an appearance or won't even show up. Because quarterbacks are more closely aligned with management than the team. And they have to be.
Yeah.
They're the face of the team. They're the highest paid. They're basically in the front office.
Yeah.
Jimmy's not like that. Jimmy's one of the guys, if there's a team dinner, he'll be there the entire time.
Yeah.
He doesn't separate himself. And from Richard Sherman's experience, I guess the implicit comparison is Russell Wilson. He didn't say it, but from Richard Sherman's experience, it's rare. And I guess I understand. I think you look at Kirk Cousins, who I would argue is pretty much in the same tier as Jimmy Garoppolo. He's kind of goofy. And I don't think his teammates look at him. Like, he had to apologize to his wide receivers earlier this year for not getting the ball better. Did you know that?
No, I
didn't. He apologized. Jimmy would never have to do that. I mean, his teammates wouldn't ask.
They wouldn't even ask
They
it.
wouldn't ask it.
Yeah.
So Kirk Cousins doesn't seem to have that same level of down-to-earthness and leadership that Jimmy has. It's one of the X factors that makes Jimmy what he is.
And I'll add, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
I'll add another thing about Jimmy. Jimmy puts his body on the line, sometimes to his own detriment.
Well, that's why he tore his ACL.
That's right. Not like a quarterback. And I think players respect that. He's a football player.
No question.
He's not a diva.
He's a football player and he's a team guy. He's not a diva in any way.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about him with the porn star girl was kind of funny, but it's not like he's Baker Mayfield shooting a million commercials. You don't wonder with Jimmy Garoppolo, is he committed to football? Is he spending enough time on it? Like with Baker Mayfield, it's like, dude, how did you have time to shoot 30 commercials this off? Jimmy's not like that.
And who the hell is Baker Mayfield?
Yeah. Who the hell is Baker Mayfield? We got stuff to talk about Baker Mayfield. We're going to get to him in a minute.
Okay, I got our list here because we make a list. Let me see what comes next.
Very organized.
It's your handwriting. Oh, Brady.
We want to talk about
move
Brady.
on to Brady?
Yeah.
Okay. I said to Iggy when we started, we ought to talk about is Brady going to retire? And my son says to me, no, the better question is, where will he play next season? He's not going to retire. So he said the better question, i.e., bad question, Dad. So
well, Brady's made it pretty clear he wants to play to 45.
okay, so you tell us, where do you think he might play next season?
Well, he might play with New England.
Yeah.
But the reason he may not, first of all, he doesn't even live in Massachusetts anymore. I think he moved out, got a new house in Connecticut. Also, that offense stinks. They lost Rob Gronkowski. There's no more weapons there. They traded a second-round pick for this wide receiver, Mohamed Sanu, who stinks. There's not a lot of incentive for Brady to stay there. If he stays, he may not win another Super Bowl.
Right.
So there may be some urgency for him to leave. That's why Adam Schefter has said he thinks Brady may be leaving, and Chris Collinsworth last night on television said he thinks Brady may be leaving too. So I have two places I think he may end up. The one is what Collinsworth said on TV last night, the Chargers. Rivers is a free agent. He might leave. They may not want him anymore. He didn't exactly play well this year. They're going into a new stadium. They need to sell tickets. The more interesting scenario to me is Cleveland.
Talk about Cleveland.
Because Cleveland is arguably the worst organization in sports, but they have a loaded roster. They have a much more talented roster than the Patriots have. If he would go over there, he could throw the ball to Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, hand off to Nick Chubb. It would probably be the best team he could walk into. Would be similar to what Peyton Manning did at the end of his career with the Broncos.
Okay. Is Brady still an elite quarterback?
He didn't play like an elite quarterback this year, but I would say it was more because his offensive line was bad and he had no weapons. I wouldn't say he's really taken a step back. No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
So for a team like Cleveland, he might really make sense.
Oh, yeah. And the way I look at Cleveland, the only way you could say don't do it is because they have Baker Mayfield. But I don't like Baker Mayfield. We just talked about him. I'm not even sure how coachable he is, how dedicated he is. If I were the Browns should bring in Brady if they could and at least consider trading Baker Mayfield or put him on the bench for a few years and say, hey, why don't you learn from Tom Brady?
Speaking of Tom Brady going to Cleveland, who's going to be Cleveland's head coach next season?
Speaking of that, well, they've interviewed 9 guys. 2 of the guys are going to be in the Niners-Vikings game. Robert Saleh and Kevin Stefanski, the offensive coordinator for the Vikings. So in a way, you could look at it as a job is on the line. Whichever guy coaches better, whichever team wins, that guy might go to.
It's an audition. The game
Absolutely.
for them is an audition.
Absolutely. The Vikings, the Browns can look at Stefanski's offense and Saleh's defense and see which guy's better. And I would expect, even though Saleh's defense has really struggled the last couple of months, it's going to be rested. I think the Niners defense is going to make that offense look pretty sick.
Saleh, would he be a good choice for Cleveland?
I think he would, even though everyone's thinking they need to get an offensive coach. They need someone who can groom Baker Mayfield. They've tried that.
Yeah.
They had Hugh Jackson. They had Freddie Kitchens. I think there is a fallacy in the NFL that you want to have an offensive play caller as a head coach. Just because you're a good offensive play caller doesn't make you a leader. Those are 2 totally different skill sets.
Right.
And from Saleh, what I see from him is he's a real leader. Players play hard for him. Always. Even the last 2 years when the defense wasn't good, he engages the players. He's not one of these aloof coaches who seems like he can't interact with young guys. I mean, he's always down there on the, hugging the players. It seems like they really, really like him. Also, I think this is important, he's an alpha male. Unlike Mike McCarthy, who to me is a little bit of a dud, I think he actually could, even though he's young, I think he could command the respect of the players. And when he was in Jacksonville before he came to the Niners, he had a lot of quote-unquote problem players who weren't problems for him. I think he treats players with respect, treats them like grown-ups, and gets the best out of them. I think he's a real leader.
Okay, you brought up Mike McCarthy. He just got the job in Dallas.
Whew.
What is your opinion of Dallas hiring? Well, two things. Your opinion of them hiring him and your opinion of him.
I think they basically went from Jason Garrett to Jason Garrett.
I love it.
I think they're the same guy. You look at them and they inspire no confidence. They're not alpha males. They seem submissive on the sideline. And the thing about McCarthy, he got fired. He spent a year away from the game, and he went on a PR tour, giving interviews to anyone who would listen, saying all the things he's done in his year off, how he's changed, how he's learned, and how much he needs the game, how much he misses it. To me, it was pathetic. It was like begging to get back in the league. And of course, the only team that would fall for some stuff like that is the Cowboys, who seem to like to have coaches who are totally desperate and kiss up to Jerry Jones, almost like the Jim Tom Sula type.
I always felt about McCarthy, and he was with the Niners, that he, in terms of football smarts, he has a middling intellect.
And I think that's what Aaron Rodgers felt too. I think Aaron Rodgers kept his mouth shut for years and years and years and finally said, I'm getting old, enough of this guy. And the ironic thing, or the tragedy for Aaron Rodgers is he got an even worse coach coming in after him.
Yeah, and this is all the Sean McVay idea.
Oh, yeah.
It was, you called it a fad earlier in this broadcast.
It is a fad.
They've really blown that up. They've shown...
No question.
Yeah.
And if you look at the coaches who've gotten hired so far in this cycle, older guys, Ron Rivera, Mike McCarthy, guys with a track record who've been to Super Bowls. That I know Sean McVay, so I should be a head coach. Trend is over. And one more thing, the interesting thing about Saleh, he's not an offensive coach. He's a defensive coach. And with a team like Cleveland, that their main issue is they have no discipline and no leadership. A guy like Saleh can actually instill a culture of accountability. That's what a head coach has to do.
Yep.
I'm holding all you players accountable as professionals in a consistent way, and a lot of times offensive play callers can't do that. He can.
Did you see one of the first things Rivera did when he took over?
Oh, yeah.
Say.
He took away that freaking ping pong table, and I love it. I understand, like, if a good team is 13-3 and they want to show that they can be competitive in the locker room in other ways, great, you earned it. But if you're coming off a bunch of losing seasons in a row, forget the ping pong table. Focus on football, earn the ping pong table.
Yes, and Rivera's from a military family.
That's right. He wasn't in the military, but he's a brat, right? His dad was.
Brat, yeah.
He's a brat.
Yeah, so he has...
We're losers.
Yeah,
we should not be playing ping pong.
No,
We're losers.
Get it out of here.
Yeah.
Get it out of
When
here.
we're winners, we can play some ping pong.
Right.
That's the way I felt.
I really respect Ron. Well, I
too.
love Ron Rivera, and I
love
really
Ron
respect what he did.
Yes.
Okay, we're moving on.
I'm also not surprised that he got scooped up right away. His reputation is gold.
He's a decent guy.
No question.
He's a tough guy.
Grown up.
He's a Cal graduate. He's a
leader.
smart guy. He's a leader.
He's
yeah.
everything.
I really like it. Yeah. Okay, we're going to shift. We have a bonus topic.
Bonus topic.
Because we like to try to limit this to 30, 35 minutes.
Yes.
So
bonus.
So you say what the bonus topic is.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the...
I want to ask you, because you've been asking me a lot about current football stuff. I want to ask you about big picture Bay Area sports.
Yeah.
Talking last 60 years. So going back to 1960, who would you say are the top 5 most important sports figures in Bay Area history the last 60 years?
Okay. It's a very...
Doesn't have to be athletes.
Yes, I understand. Very interesting. And the key adjective is important. Yes. Doesn't mean even the best.
No.
It means, or the most likable.
No.
It means most important.
Most important.
Okay. I think there are 3 no-brainers.
Yes.
Willie Mays.
Yes.
Bill Walsh.
Correct.
Joe Montana.
No question.
Those are the 3 no-brainers.
Yes.
So I want to fill out 2 more and then say some of the people that we didn't put on the list.
Right. I can mention some names too that didn't make the cut. We'll go through them.
I would say Stephen Curry.
No question.
He's, I think, the greatest Golden State Warrior who's ever played.
He's the Joe Montana of basketball.
He's the Joe, and he, in a way, revolutionized the league. He's likable, and he won a lot of championships.
Yeah, in a way, he revolutionized the league, kind of like Bill Walsh.
Yes, interesting.
Yeah.
So
well, you can give that credit to Don Nelson, who's not going to make this list.
No, not good. Because the 5th, and this will surprise people who've read me over the years, Barry Bonds.
Yes.
Now, let me say a couple of things. I don't vote for Barry for the Hall of Fame because I believe he got caught cheating. We may disagree on that. You may think it's okay to cheat because everybody else did or whatever, or he would have made it.
Not okay to cheat.
I don't think it's okay to cheat, so I don't vote for him for the Baseball Hall of Fame. Having said that, I happily acknowledge that in the last 60 years, I'm 74, so it would start when I was about 14 and still in New York. He was so important to Bay Area sports. First of all, he was a great, great baseball player.
Certainly.
He was
even before he started cheating.
Well, yes, a Hall of Famer.
Which is what makes his story even more tragic, if you want to say that.
I want to say tragic.
Yeah.
It's a tragic, self-inflicted tragedy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like he was some chemical creation who never would have made it without
That's right.
steroids. He really didn't need to do this.
No, none of this. And it put him under such stress. He had to go into court trials and all of
Yeah.
that. And a lot of people don't respect him. And in certain ways, I don't respect him. Having said that, he was so important to the Giants. They would not have that ballpark.
No.
And that's
an interesting thing to say.
yeah. And now there are other great ballparks in the major leagues, but that might be the best.
But it's an interesting metric to measure a person's importance. Did you get a ballpark built? Barry Bonds did. Stephen Curry did.
Babe Ruth did.
I want to mention some other people who did. Jim Harbaugh.
Yes, he got a stadium built.
While he's not on this list, I would say he is a close snub.
Yeah, we could say if we were making a top 25,
He'd be interested. I mean, he was only here for a few years. You could add more with the Stanford stuff. That was interesting too. He'd be into it. He'd be maybe top 15
and Palo Alto High.
in Palo Alto High.
Okay.
Other people who would be close but wouldn't make it. Al Davis.
That's interesting. Al Davis is a major, major sports figure nationally, not only in the Bay Area,
question.
but in the Bay Area, he was down in LA for a long time.
You could make the argument that he's a more important figure in football history than Bill Walsh.
Oh, absolutely.
You could make that argument.
Because in a way, he created the what was then the AFL, and it became
question.
the AFC.
Yes.
But I don't count him at that level in the Bay Area because he was in LA all those years.
left.
And in addition, when I was breaking in as a sports writer, he wasn't here.
Right.
So all of my impressions are Niners, not Raiders.
No question.
Okay, who else didn't make it?
Ricky Henderson,
Oh, boy.
not a cheater. Greatest leadoff hitter of all time
And a good guy.
from Oakland.
Yeah. Well, it's just we only had 5.
He would be top 10.
Oh, absolutely. You could make a case that he's the greatest ball player from Oakland who ever lived, who grew up in Oakland, except Frank Robinson.
There's a lot of them.
You know, Frank Robinson.
Jerry Rice didn't make the list.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Arguably the greatest football player of all time.
Yes.
But he just wasn't as significant of a. He was a great football player, but he wasn't as famous among non-sports fans as Joe Montana or Barry Bonds.
Yes, and I would say one thing about Joe Montana and Jerry. Joe Montana was the quarterback.
Right.
And that's all you need to know.
Right.
The quarterback controls everything, and is as great as a wide receiver is, the quarterback is always more important.
True. Steve Young didn't make the list.
Because of Joe Montana.
Kevin Durant didn't make the list.
See you, Kevin. I mean,
See you, Kevin.
You know what? He was just visiting. He
Passing
was
through.
Passing through.
Yeah, it's like if you put Kevin on the list, you have to put Tiger Woods on the list
Yeah.
for his 2 years at Stanford. Rick Barry didn't make it.
Well, okay. For people who are younger,
Like
and
me.
who didn't see Rick Barry play, all I can say about Rick Barry is, wow, what a ball player. I didn't put him on the list because of Stephen Curry,
Yeah,
but wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
fair enough. And
Yeah.
also he's going up against guys like Jerry Rice, who also
Yeah.
didn't make it in.
Yeah.
One more name, Eddie D.
That is so interesting. Eddie D didn't make it for all the right reasons. As an owner, Eddie D stayed in the background a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what an owner should do.
Yeah.
And so because he stayed in the background, he didn't have the oversized personality that Al Davis did.
Right.
But he was a better owner.
Right. And he hired Bill Walsh. So he may not be, Plato, but he discovered him.
Right. He hired Bill
He
Walsh.
hired Bill Walsh.
And stuck with Bill Walsh when he had 2 awful seasons to begin with, and he stuck with them. And what people, you may or may not know, Bill was very depressive sometimes and anxiety prone. And
Didn't
Eddie,
necessarily come across as an alpha male, did he?
he did to his players. But certainly not to Eddie and
Yeah.
not to Carmen
Or
Policy
the Bengals, who passed him over.
for those reasons.
Was it Tiger Johnson?
Yeah. Who was a non-entity.
A non-entity, but probably
Yeah.
some guy who looked tougher.
Yes. And so for all of that, despite all of that, Eddie stuck with Bill for 3 Super Bowls.
And on top of that, not just that he stuck with him, he went out on a limb and hired him. It's not like Bill Walsh was the most sought after. I wasn't alive back then, but I mean, he was coming out of Stanford.
Yeah.
He gotten passed over. He didn't get the job in Cincinnati. I'm sure there were other people. I'm sure the NFL was somewhat, conflicted about him.
Well, I would say Paul Brown at Cincinnati probably put the word out. Now, again, I can't say for sure, but Bill said he put the word out, don't hire this guy.
Don't hire him.
Don't hire him.
Yeah.
So there was sort of an undercurrent in the NFL that Bill was not suitable.
Yeah.
And Eddie hired him and stuck with him. So I give Eddie tremendous credit
Yes.
as being a great owner, but not in the top 5, and maybe not even as a sports figure in the level of Al Davis.
True.
Maybe not. This is certainly arguable, and Eddie was really, really, really important. And as Grant knows, because we don't socialize with Eddie, but we've seen him, and we talk to him on the phone sometimes. You know, when he was younger, like when I was younger, we had a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah.
Eddie is a thoroughly delightful person
Yes.
now. He is someone that you really, would you agree, like to be around?
Absolutely. And so is Carmen Policy.
Yes.
Carmen Policy is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to say, we were at a thing with Eddie, and I'll get back to Carmen because I love Carmen. We were in fact, it was the night Carmen got into the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame. And when it was over, Grant and I were talking to Eddie, and Eddie said, you know, Lowell, you've done a really good job of bringing up your son. And I thought, from one father to another, what a lovely thing to say.
Yeah, Eddie DeBartolo gave me a one-on-one interview over the phone during the Chip Kelly year, and we spoke for an hour. He was really generous with his time.
Yeah.
And then afterward, he said, you know, I just want to say I'm really touched by how much you look up to your dad.
Yes.
I really appreciate
And he
your
said
relationship.
because he looked up to his dad.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is the same thing Harbaugh has told us.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Carmen Policy generally has an annual luncheon for the old time media. He gets like a big banquet room at a fancy San Francisco hotel. He brings his own Cabernet. He makes up in Napa. He makes a cab. It's the best I've ever tasted. I mean, I can't afford it, but he's so generous. And we have these luncheons. We all get kind of drunk, and we all tell stories and lies. And Carmen is one of the most delightful characters in sports that I've ever run across in my life. And I'm happy to call him my friend.
Great storyteller.
Oi!
At your retirement dinner, he told a story, and he was like, he shut the whole thing down.
He shut the whole thing down.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was at my retirement dinner in my house. I want you to know
And he was like the guest of honor. He brought all the wine. I mean, he really, really did it big for you.
He was, yes.
Yes.
He was told a story that when he was at Cleveland, he was the president of.
Oh, this is such a good story.
And there was a player.
Practice squad guy.
No,
not practice squad. I think he was like one of the 90 guys invited to training camp.
Yeah. Who had a Jewish sounding name.
Yes. And they were so proud.
Because the owner was Lerner.
Yes.
And was so proud that there was a Jewish.
And I think they were like marketing him like, hey, to their season ticket holders, you gotta meet this guy. He's Jewish. He's a really interesting guy.
So the guy came to Carmen one day. He said, I'm really sorry to tell you, but I'm not Jewish. And Carmen said to him, you're Jewish.
Yeah, if you want to stay on this team, you better be Jewish.
You better be Jewish.
That's one more. Before we go, I want to say we gave Eddie credit for choosing to hire Bill Walsh. To me, hiring a head coach is the most difficult thing an owner has to do. Owners are business people. They succeed in business. They get into sports. It's a different world. It's really hard. A lot of them fail gloriously at first. Look at Jed.
Yeah.
I mean, Jed hired Tom Sula, Chip Kelly.
Singletary.
The hardest thing to do is to hire the coach. And to hire the guy who isn't famous already, who's on the way up and not on the way down, it's really commendable. It's what Eddie did with Bill Walsh, and it's what Jed did with Kyle. I mean, what Dallas just did, they hired Mike McCarthy. Come on, man. Like, he's been washed up for a decade.
I agree.
He's over the hill. He's
Yeah.
been he's a high level loser. What would have been more impressive is if they had got someone who was on the way up, who hadn't lost those big games before, who hadn't been exposed yet. And that's what Jed York did. He deserves credit for that.
Yeah, again, go back to Dallas. They could have interviewed Robert Saleh.
No question. They didn't even interview him.
He's the hottest assistant coach in the league right now.
And to hire Robert Saleh would be taking that leap of faith that Jed took and that Eddie took. I'm not going to get some guy who everyone knows and who's failed, some retread. No, I'm going to try to have a little foresight. And remember, your friend Gary Cavalli,
Yes.
who used to be on the bowl committee.
Yeah.
I think he was also with Stanford when they hired.
He was on the committee to hire
hired
Bill
Walsh.
Yeah.
He talks about this, about how you don't want to hire the retread guy, that you want to hire the guy who hasn't made tens of millions of dollars and who hasn't been to the big games, a guy who has a lot to prove. That's not Mike McCarthy. That's Saleh. That was Kyle Shanahan, and that was Bill Walsh in 1979.
And I'll tell you something else who it's not. Gruden.
Oh, it's certainly not Gruden.
Not Gruden. Gruden has all the wrong portfolio.
That's right.
He has
That's
all
right.
the wrong. On that note,
that's time.
That's time. It was great talking to you people.
Talk to you next week.